My mother took me to the market and stopped in front of a worn-down apartment building. She said, "Lena, wait for me here." I nodded obediently, clutching my teddy bear, and waited, but she never came back. People passed by, glancing at me where I crouched in the corner, hugging my bear tighter. Jack, from the nearby steamed bun stall, asked if I was hungry. I didn't hear him. I was mute, and half-deaf besides. To me, sound was like scattered fragments. I could only catch them when they were close enough. He stepped nearer, bent down, and repeated the question softly. I saw the fresh, steaming white bun in his hand and signed, "I'm hungry." Jack froze for a moment, his brows knitting with sudden pity, then he held out the bun to me. I nibbled at the bread in small bites, waiting for my mother to return. People kept glancing at me, but after meeting Jack's eyes, they averted theirs and slipped away. I stayed beside him and his stray yellow dog, wondering if the dog too was waiting for someone. By the second day after my mother left, I was crouched near the bun stall again, fists clenched, bear in my arms. I wanted to cry so badly, but I swallowed it down. Just as I always did, my mother hated my tears. Every time I cried, she told me to get out, so I knew crying was a bad thing. Crying meant being abandoned. The tighter I clenched my fists, the safer my tears stayed locked inside. On the fourth day, Jack was unusually quiet. When he closed the stall, he walked over and, using awkward, halting sign language he must have picked up somewhere, spelled out, "Your mother isn't coming back." I stood still, refusing to believe him. Jack frowned, uncertain whether he'd signed it wrong. He glanced back at a thin teenage boy who had just bought buns and gestured for help. The boy approached me, poked my shoulder, and when I looked up at his cool, distant face, he signed with practiced precision, "She's abandoned you." I hugged my teddy bear tighter, stubbornly furrowing my brow and keeping my gaze fixed on the direction my mother had gone. The boy's jaw tightened, irritated. He seized my arm and signed again, sharply this time, "Your mother, she's not coming back for you." My whole body went rigid, eyes wide, fists clenched so hard they hurt. I willed my tears to stay put, forcing myself to breathe evenly, even though, deep down, I knew he was right. Over those days I kept replaying everything, my mother's face before we left home, her expression and her eyes. I remembered how I'd accidentally broken a cup, the look she gave me then, cold as ice. She gripped my shoulders so hard I thought she'd crush me, anger burning in her gaze, as if asking why I even existed. I had scrambled to pick up every shard, crying, signing over and over that I was sorry, begging her not to be angry, promising I would be careful. Later that day she became calm again. Even gentle, she smiled and asked if I wanted to go to the park. I thought she had forgiven me and said yes eagerly. She smiled faintly, took my hand, and, seeing my teddy bear on the sofa, paused. She handed it to me without a word. I didn't understand why we needed the bear for the park. But she just remained quiet, her face unreadable. She even bought me an ice cream that day. My first ever. I had always watched other children from the park's edge, imagining the taste. I ate tiny bites, savoring each one, but it melted faster than I could finish. I tried to hide the mess on my shirt with my bear, terrified she would scold me, but she stayed calm. Then she brought me here. "Lena, wait for mommy," and she never came back. I thought it must be because I broke the cup. When I came back to myself, the boy was still standing there, studying me. For an instant, something flickered in his eyes, like he saw someone else in my place. He raised a hand as if to speak, then lowered it, sighed, and pulled a crumpled 5 yuan note from his pocket. He gestured toward the cotton candy vendor nearby. I didn't take the money. With a small, exasperated shake of his head, he signed patiently, "Go on, it's sweet." I hesitated. He grabbed my sleeve, steered me toward the vendor, and handed over the money. The vendor smiled, twirling the white sugar threads around the stick until they blossomed like a cloud. I watched, wide-eyed, then accepted the enormous candy floss, bigger than my head. Without a word, Ethan grinned, tore off a tuft, and popped it into my mouth. It dissolved instantly, eyes wide. I signed to him, astonished that it had vanished in my mouth. He laughed, a real laugh that lit up his cold face, and asked if I felt a little happier. I gave a small smile, savoring the sweetness, and signed back, Thank you. Ethan teased that I was so dirty my mother might not recognize me if she did return. He and Jack fetched a basin and a hose, washing me clean, along with the little yellow dog. Just then, a greaser-looking man appeared at the bun stall doorway, cracking sunflower seeds and muttering something under his breath. Ethan's expression darkened immediately. Before he could respond, the usually gentle Jack stormed out and punched the man squarely in the face. The man crumpled to the ground, blood blooming on his cheek. A group of rough-looking men rushed in, shouting and shoving Jack. They piled on him, fists flying. Jack didn't fight back right away. He glanced toward us, worried. Ethan understood instantly. He scooped me up, carried me into the kitchen at the back, and locked the door. Through the narrow crack, we watched as those men pinned Jack to the floor and beat him mercilessly. I struggled in Ethan's arms, crying and thrashing in panic. Ethan clamped a hand over my mouth. His own body had gone stiff with fear as he stared silently at the scene unfolding outside. The mob beating up Uncle. There was hatred in his eyes, but even more than that, there was a strange calmness, as if he had long gotten used to it. They beat Uncle until he was covered in blood, overturned his steamed bun stall, smashed his chairs and tables, and spat on him. But Uncle remained calm, and that calmness suddenly terrified me. A deep, overwhelming fear surged through my chest. Clutching tightly to Ethan's shirt, I trembled. I didn't know where they were planning to take me. I froze there, waiting for them to decide my fate, but all Uncle did was slowly get up, quietly wipe the blood off himself, and begin cleaning up the mess. He carefully dusted himself off, wrapped a towel roughly around one of his wounds, and headed to the kitchen. When he saw us huddled in the corner, the calm on his face melted into something else, gentle, apologetic sorrow. Using the sign language Ethan had been teaching him, he spelled out, "A bow, I'm sorry." I stared at him, stunned. Why was he apologizing? I searched his expression, trying to find something familiar, something that reminded me of the day my mother left me behind, that cold indifference, but it wasn't there. Instead, he ruffled my hair and whispered, "It's okay." After that day, I became extremely careful. I was eager to help him, running back and forth, carrying things, always watching my every step. Whenever I saw a cup, a bowl, anything fragile, I'd tense up. My heart would leap into my throat. I handled everything like it was glass, like I was glass. Uncle must have noticed how afraid I was. One day, he deliberately knocked over a bowl. The shattering sound froze me in place. I stared at the shards on the floor, my emotions spiraling out of control. I was on the verge of tears, but Uncle just chuckled and said lightly, "What a lousy bowl. Breaks so easily." I blinked up at him through teary eyes. He came over and pulled me into his arms. "It's just a broken bowl," he said softly, "nothing worth crying over." I don't know why, but at that moment, the dam inside me broke. I burst into tears, loud, uncontrollable sobbing. I had never cried like that before, because my mother hated it. Every time I cried, she'd tell me to get out, so I learned to suppress everything, my tears, my voice, my feelings. I lived cautiously, like a fragile piece of porcelain, like that cup I saw in my dreams, over and over. One I cradled so carefully, only to watch it shatter. And now, finally, I let it all out, all my sorrow, all my fear. I cried until I had nothing left. Uncle knelt beside me, smiling gently as I bawled my heart out. He stroked my head and teased, "For a little mute, you sure cry loud." Through the tears, I broke into a silly, hiccuping laugh. They say children carry stars in their eyes, and in that moment, I think we both saw galaxies reflected in each other's. Uncle's light-heartedness shattered my fear of things breaking. I began to brighten. Every day, I followed him around like a little tail. Whenever he met someone, he'd say, "This is my kid," and if someone asked, "Your kid? With who?" he'd roll his eyes and snap, "With you." Before walking off, they'd laugh awkwardly and drop the subject. Every few days, Ethan would come by with cotton candy for me. He always seemed to have money. His pockets were never empty. We'd sit in front of the electric fan, I nibbling my cotton candy, while he sat across from Uncle at the bun shop, teaching him sign language. Uncle was terrible at it. He could knead dough with lightning speed, but with signs, he was clumsy. Always forgetting the gestures, Ethan finally waved him off. You know what? Just stop. If you need to say anything, I'll translate. Then, one night, we heard a loud crash from upstairs. As if something had collapsed, the whole building trembled. Moments later, Ethan emerged, face bruised and battered. His lips were caked with dried blood. New blood trickled from his arm and cheek. Uncle pulled him into the shop and began cleaning his wounds like it was just another routine. I stood by nervously, staring at his bleeding arm. The wound wasn't deep, but the blood wouldn't stop. It was frightening to watch. Shaking, I signed to him. Does it hurt? He froze. Maybe no one had ever asked him that before. He pressed his lips together, then answered, no. While Uncle and I dressed his wounds, a drunk man staggered in, clutching a liquor bottle. He pointed right at Ethan's nose. You little punk, you think you can hide here? Come home with me. Ethan clenched his fists, but his whole body trembled uncontrollably. I knew he was scared. That kind of fear had become instinct for him. His eyes were red, tears brimming as he shook violently. Yet he still stood up. The moment he got to his feet, the drunk kicked him hard. His lower back slammed against the corner of the table, and he fell to his knees, clutching his waist in pain, tears streaming down his face. I grabbed my uncle's arm tightly, hoping he would step in. With a helpless sigh, my uncle stood up to intervene, but the drunk pointed a finger at his nose and cursed. He's my son. I'll do whatever the hell I want. None of your damn business. My uncle held back, saying nothing, only moving to shield Ethan behind him. Ethan steadied himself, let out a faint smile, then patted my uncle's arm and nodded to show he was okay. He followed the drunk man back inside. Just before disappearing, he turned and looked at me deeply, then stuck out his tongue and made a silly face. For days afterward, Ethan didn't appear. One evening, I stood outside his building, eyes locked on their window, heart full of unease. Today, they hadn't drawn the curtains. I strained my ears, but heard nothing. I held my breath and waited. When the stairway light flickered on, I jumped to my feet, tense. Ethan emerged from the light and handed me a small cake. He smiled and held up his arm, showing me the unmarked skin. No new injuries. With a triumphant grin, he said, I didn't get hit today. We crouched beneath the moonlight, sharing the little cake. I hadn't eaten many cakes before. Each bite, I took small and careful, like it was precious. He sat next to me, quietly watching. His eyes dimmed for a moment. Then suddenly, they lit up, filled with something resolute. He patted my head. Bow, he said, when I grow up, I'll buy you lots of delicious food. Whatever you want, you can have. Really? I blinked at him, unsure, looking at his bruises and battered body. I couldn't help but doubt him a little. He nodded. Yeah. Really? He fell silent, then bent his head and used a twig to draw a cat in the dirt at his feet. His voice was low, almost inaudible. You know, honestly, I've never wanted to grow up. He looked up and smiled at me. I always felt like I wouldn't make it that far anyway. But now, he looked at me again, this time with fierce determination in his eyes. Now I want to live. Back then, I didn't understand. He laughed and ruffled my hair, amused by my puzzled expression. In my memory, he wasn't someone who smiled a lot, but when he smiled at me, it was always bright, like sunshine, and every time he smiled, I thought, maybe my existence means something. Maybe I'm not just a burden. Suddenly, he asked, Bao, have you ever been to an amusement park? I shook my head and made a gesture with my hands. Only seen one from the outside. He said, I'll take you tomorrow. Then he looked down and added, I went once, a long time ago. He lifted his head, smiling, eyes misty. Then he didn't say another word, but used his hands to sign. The day my mom left me, she took me to the amusement park. The next morning, I got up early, dressed, and waited for Ethan to take me, but my uncle suddenly came in from outside, looking nervous. He stared at me, his face stiff with worry, then forced a smile, trying to soften it with kindness. All packed. Today Uncle's taking you. He shut the bun shop's front door behind him. Outside, I could hear the rustling of many footsteps, chaotic and fast. Voices began to rise. Move aside. Make way, please. I felt a growing sense of dread. The way my uncle stood in front of the door, it was clear he didn't want me to see. I pushed past him, stubborn and scared. He tried to stop me, but I had already seen it. I saw several people coming down the stairs of Ethan's old apartment building. They were carrying a stretcher. There was someone on it, covered with a white sheet, but under the jostling of their steps, an arm slipped out from under the sheet. Around that wrist was the pink hair tie I always used, because every time, it was Ethan who helped me do my hair. He would braid it, tie it up. Uncle couldn't. He was too clumsy. Every time Uncle tried, Ethan would laugh and call him useless. I stood there frozen, unable to comprehend what was happening. The men weren't from a hospital. They drove a long, boxy van, not an ambulance. They placed Ethan's body inside the back of the van. My chest ached. I didn't know what it meant. I had never seen anything like this before. Confused and trembling, I turned to my uncle. Tears filled my eyes. My whole body shook. My veins burned with a pain I couldn't explain. Sharp, dull, twisting, with blurry vision. I looked at my uncle and raised my hands, signing, "Why? What happened?" But he didn't answer. Maybe he didn't understand, or maybe he didn't want to. He came over, wrapped his arms around me, and covered my ears, pressed my face into his chest. Even the faintest sounds were sealed off. Then, quietly, he whispered, "Ethan's not coming back." I didn't believe him. I kept signing the question, over and over again. Why? And then I remembered that night. Not long after I'd been abandoned, I had signed that same question to Ethan. I asked him, why didn't my mom want me? With trembling hands, I kept asking, was it because I'm mute? Was it because I broke that glass? But I was good. I never gave her trouble. I could do everything by myself. Even when I was little, I never bothered her. I stayed quiet. So why did she throw me away? Tears streamed down my face. I couldn't stop shaking. Ethan had gripped my hands back then, tightly, so tight. As if holding on to me could hold together all my breaking pieces. He clenched his jaw and suddenly pulled me into a hug. His hands were rough, but his embrace was warm. His voice was calm, steady, as he told me, "Love doesn't need a reason, Bao. No matter how good you are, that doesn't mean she'll love you. That's not true." He lifted his head and gently wiped away my tears, his brows furrowed, as if he had finally made up his mind. "Your mother, she's a bad person." I looked up at him, dazed. His voice was calm, but his brow remained tightly knit. "Do you know why she left you here? Why it was this market, this rundown apartment building, not anywhere else?" I didn't understand, but I wanted to. I tilted my head slightly to hear him better. He clenched his teeth, then said quietly, "Because this place is a rat's nest. The most dangerous part of the city. This building is filled with thieves, traffickers, robbers, rapists, even murderers. She left you here because she didn't want to see you ever again. She knew that no one around here would be kind enough to take you back to her. Do you get it?" I stood there, frozen. Not a single word came out of my mouth. The breeze brushed past me, but all I felt was bone-deep cold. I wished I'd misheard him, but with my weakened hearing, I'd caught every word, every single one. Suddenly, he pulled me into a tight embrace, holding back the pain in his chest. He whispered softly, "Stop waiting." Not long after Ethan passed away, that old building was demolished. The whole market was cleared out. Uncle took me to rent a place in a nice neighborhood downtown so I could go to school. He never told me things like study hard or you'll be a failure. He never scolded me like other parents did. He always said, if you're tired, take a break. Once you've rested, get back on your feet. He wasn't one for shortcuts or quick wins. He just taught me how to walk steadily down the path ahead. And so, I grew up by his side, stronger every day, just not quite as cheerful as before. Every year, we visited Ethan together. Ethan didn't have a grave. We buried his ashes under a small white poplar tree. Each year, I brought him a big cotton candy, just like the one he gave me the day we met. Uncle. No, my dad. My dad started growing older. His body began to break down. He took more and more medicine. Whenever I offered to go to the hospital with him, he would always refuse. So I made a silent promise to myself. I would study hard in high school, get into a good university, and find a job as soon as possible. That way, he could retire early and stop running his stall. Then one evening, just as I'd started senior year of high school, my teacher suddenly called me to the school gate. He said, "Your mother is here." Mother, that word felt foreign to me. Honestly, after more than 10 years, I couldn't even remember her face clearly. But the moment I saw her, I knew, it was her. She looked very different, but hadn't aged much, not like my dad, who had weathered wind and sun, rising before dawn every day, at 50. He looked like he was in his 70s, she must have been in her 40s now, yet she still looked the same as before. She was dressed impeccably, her coat was clearly made of expensive fabric that shimmered under the sun, making everyone else's clothes look cheap by comparison. She was covered in jewelry, from earrings to necklaces, rings to bangles, dripping in gold and gems. She stepped out of the back seat of a luxury car. The moment she saw me, her eyes lit up briefly with joy. Then she nodded and said to the person beside her, "That's her." We looked too much alike, even strangers would instantly recognize the blood connection. Because of her appearance and her car, my teacher greeted her with extra enthusiasm. "Lena's mother, is this your first time at our school? Her father usually picks her up." My mother frowned slightly. "Father?" Then she seemed to realize it was probably my adoptive father. She nodded with a polite smile. "Yes, I've been busy." After a bit of small talk, the teacher left me with her. She looked at me and smiled. "Lena, you've grown up." I don't know why, but that smile made my skin crawl. It wasn't just the smile, it was everything about her. Everything made me feel disgusted, like I was going to throw up. I stood there, my expression icy. Silent, she reached out and gently touched my hearing aid behind my ear. "Oh, looks like your adoptive father treated you well." Then she took my hand and said something as if reading from a script. "Don't hate your mother, sweetie." I had my reasons back then. I yanked my hand away and signed furiously. "Don't come here to disgust me." She clearly hadn't expected that. She looked at me, eyes filled with judgment and curiosity. "What kind of person raised you to be this rude and ungrateful?" I held back the urge to slap her. I turned and walked away. She came after me. "Lena, come on. Let mommy take you to the hospital for a checkup." "Okay, they said this can be cured. Don't you want to speak again?" I stopped in my tracks, a little shaken. She walked over, stepped in front of me, and gently stroked my cheek with a soft gaze. "Mommy feels guilty, so let me make it up to you, okay?" I followed her to the hospital. I wanted to hear. I wanted to speak. If I could speak, maybe I could find a good job one day. Then I could take care of my dad. She had a nurse take me for a full physical examination. Holding the test results, the doctor spoke to her quietly. I didn't hear what they said. She nodded, then walked over and told me, "Lena, the doctor said you need a surgery. After that, you'll get better. But before the surgery, you need to have 4 days of injections, and then do some blood tests." "Okay," I nodded. That evening, I went home. My dad was taking his medicine. When he saw me, his hand trembled and knocked over the pill bottle. Pills scattered across the floor. I went over to pick them up. He gave a bitter smile. "Dad's getting old." I was upset. My sign language was a bit too forceful. "Not old." He got up and led me to the drawer in the TV cabinet. "Bow, listen to me. This drawer has our family's bank books, our household registration, and my ID too." He opened the drawer and pulled out the bank books one by one, explaining them to me carefully. "This money, don't touch it, it's for your college tuition. Make sure you use it wisely. This one, it's your dowry, we can't let anyone look down on you. And this one, don't touch it unless there's an emergency, it's for a rainy day, if you ever get sick or run into trouble. Then you can use it." His words annoyed me. I signed angrily. "Why are you telling me all this?" Dad sighed. "Silly girl, you're growing up, becoming an adult. I can't take care of everything for you forever. When will I ever get to enjoy life with you looking after me?" His words made me feel guilty. I lowered my head and signed, "I'm sorry." He chuckled and didn't take it to heart. He stroked my hair and asked, "What's your favorite food?" I grinned brightly and signed, "Pork ribs." He laughed too. "Braised or sweet and sour?" "Sweet and sour." He grabbed my hand and led me into the kitchen. "All right, I'll teach you how to make them. So when I'm gone, when I'm not around, you'll still be able to cook them for yourself." I nodded eagerly, filled with joy. That night, I had sweet and sour ribs and slept soundly. The next day after school, I went straight to the hospital to get the injections, just as they had arranged. While waiting, I sat beside a woman who couldn't stop crying. An elderly man sat next to her, trying to comfort her, but after a while, even he looked pained and worn. Suddenly, he noticed me. His gaze turned sympathetic. He leaned toward me and asked gently, "Do you have a family member who's sick too?" I didn't understand. He clarified, "I mean, who in your family needs the transplant?" Transplant? I froze, seeing my confused and startled face. The old man looked uncertain. He glanced at the injection room ahead and said, "Isn't this the place for cell mobilization shots for bone marrow matching?" In that instant, I understood. She didn't bring me here to cure my hearing or speech. She wasn't remorseful, she didn't want to make amends, she brought me here to test if I was a bone marrow match. For someone else. And who else could it be? Of course, I bolted from my seat and ran. The nurse behind me called my name, but I didn't look back. I ran all the way to the inpatient wing, searching floor by floor, from the first, to the third, to the sixth, drenched in sweat. I finally found her in the VIP ward hallway on the 6th floor. My mother, she was pushing a wheelchair. Strolling slowly down the corridor, in the wheelchair sat a girl around 7 or 8 years old. She looked a bit like me. Her features faintly familiar, her face was pale, her hair was gone. She sat quietly, playing with an extravagant doll princess worth tens of thousands. Mom leaned over and whispered sweetly, "Won't be long now, our Emma will have beautiful hair just like a princess again. Mommy will take you to get it styled." "Okay," the little girl responded like a baby in swaddling clothes. "Let's get big, bouncy princess curls." She hugged her doll and smiled. "Emma is a princess." Mom brushed her hand over the girl's head, full of love and affection. No pretense, none of the cold pride she wore when facing me. She kissed the girl's cheek gently. "Yes, Emma is a princess, Mommy's precious baby." At that moment, Emma looked up and saw me. Looking at her, I suddenly saw my younger self. We looked so alike, too alike. "Sophia, did you really never remember that you have another daughter? One you threw away in a filthy gutter? Did you ever worry she might die, might be hurt by someone? Or did you just want me dead? Or never cared at all? You never tried to cure me, you just wanted my bone marrow, to save your beloved little princess." My vision blurred with tears. The moment she kissed her precious daughter, my heart shattered and turned to ice. That's when I truly understood who I was. I was Lena, someone who meant nothing to her. I smiled faintly, and walked away. "Wait." Sophia chased after me. "Lena." I didn't stop. She called my name again. "Lena." Still, I didn't stop. I was already in front of the elevator. Just as I was about to step in, she shouted something that made me freeze. "Your adoptive father is a murderer." I whipped around, stunned. She smirked, stepping closer. "You didn't know, did you? That man who sells steamed buns, your beloved dad, killed someone, manslaughter. He went to prison for 6 years. I stared at her coldly, though surprised. I refused to show it. My face was calm, as if I had known all along. Sophia sneered, "What kind of future do you think you'll have with a man like that? But if you agree to the match, agree to help Emma, I'll give you money, I'll buy you a house, I'll take care of you for the rest of your life." I laughed, tears welled in my eyes. But I smiled. I turned slowly, raising my hands in sign language. "My adoptive father is a murderer. Why do I have an adoptive father? Isn't it because you abandoned me?" Sophia's face stiffened. She said nothing. "Mom, did you know, I waited for you, for so long. Why didn't you come for me?" I couldn't stop crying, the tears blurring her face until I could no longer see her expression. But I knew, she must have been calm. As calm as the day she abandoned me. She no longer hated me, and I no longer disgusted her. Because she wanted me dead, she had handed me to the jaws of wolves and tigers, hoping I would disappear from this world forever. But that tiger, the man everyone spat on and despised, he was the one who raised me. If I so much as scraped my knee, he would blame himself endlessly. "Not like you. You only wanted my bone marrow to save your precious daughter." That day, I came home early and cooked a full table of dishes for Dad. He returned looking tired, but the moment he saw me waiting in the living room, his face lit up with a wide, joyful grin. "My precious girl. How come you're home so early today? I went to him, slipped my arm through his, took the bags from his hands, and signed, because I wanted to cook for you. He rubbed his hands together with a laugh and sat at the table, staring at the feast. Suddenly, his eyes reddened, and he scrambled to hide it, laughing awkwardly. My daughter's grown up, cooking such a meal. I wonder who'll be lucky enough to eat your food every day someday. I smiled and pointed at him. You will, Dad. His eyes dimmed briefly, but he covered it with a small smile, picked up a piece of meat, and praised it repeatedly. But Sophia wasn't ready to give up. She arrived with her new husband. When I heard the knock, unease prickled in my chest. By the time I stepped out of the kitchen, they were already in the living room. I signed, "You're not welcome here." Her bloated, nouveau-riche husband glanced around our modest home and gave a cold snort. "This dump is your rental." Dad's face hardened. I think he had already recognized the woman who looked so much like me. He moved in front of me, just as he had on the day I first came to him. He always stood before me, never letting anyone speak ill of me. The man swaggered to the sofa, sat down, and slammed a stack of cash, 100,000, onto the table. "Get tested for a bone marrow match. If you're compatible and donate, I'll give you 1 million more and an apartment." I burned with anger, but before I could respond, Dad's voice cut through, cold and sharp. "Get out." The man frowned, glaring at Dad. Seeing his graying hair and slight frame, he stepped forward, looming over him with arrogant menace. "Say that again." He relied on his weight, his height, and his money, using a cruel stare to threaten. But Dad stayed calm. In his life, he had seen men far crueler. "Either leave here, or die here." His tone was flat, a simple statement of fact. The man didn't believe him. He rolled up his sleeves, ready for a fight. Sophia, frightened, reached to stop him, but he shoved her aside. He lunged at Dad. I panicked and tried to grab him, but Dad was quick, sidestepping, twisting the man's head under his arm, and hooking his foot to trip him. The man crashed clumsily to the ground. Realizing he wasn't Dad's match, the man turned his venom on me. "Stupid mute. Don't be ungrateful. I'm giving you a chance. You think your worthless life could ever earn this much, even if you sold yourself." Before he could finish, Dad snatched up the ashtray and smashed it over his head. Blood splattered. The man collapsed, unconscious. Sophia shrieked but dared not approach, and Dad, though his steps had grown unsteady with age, though exhaustion dogged him daily, somehow found strength. He dragged the man to the wall, pinned his head, and slammed it against the plaster again and again. Sophia sobbed, begging, "Stop, please, stop, you'll kill him, please." Dad released the man, strode to Sophia, grabbed her by the collar, and punched her hard across the face. "In all my life, I've never hit a woman, but you're not human." He struck her again, her teeth shattered, blood filled her mouth, and she collapsed. Unconscious, breathing heavily, Dad straightened, his arms trembled from exertion. He turned, as he always did after a fight, his voice suddenly gentle. "Careful, sweetheart. Did I scare you?" I shook my head. I was long used to this. Growing up among the market stalls, I'd seen Dad take down bullies, and seen bullies beat him until he couldn't stand. I had never been afraid, never ashamed, only angry. Angry that I could never be strong enough to stand beside him and protect him. I ran to him, took his fists in my hands, and through tears, signed, "Dad, I'm sorry." He frowned, furious. "Why are you apologizing?" "Her." He grabbed my chin, his voice trembling with fury. "Why are you apologizing?" Suddenly, he lost control, his veins bulged as he roared, "Goddamn it, it's those bastards who should rot in hell. Why are you the one apologizing?" I threw my arms around him and sobbed uncontrollably, and then, he hugged me back. His whole body trembled as tears streamed down his face. Tears I'd never seen from him before, not once in my entire life. A bow, "I'm sorry." At the time, I still didn't understand why he was apologizing, not until the next day, when the police came to our home. As far as I knew, Sophia's family had never apologized for what they did. They were still trying to keep some leverage, to coerce me into donating bone marrow, and the first thing the officer said when he stepped through the door was, "Who's turning themselves in?" My father walked out from the bedroom. I was stunned. I couldn't understand. He kept his head down the whole time. Not once did he look at me. They took my father away. He confessed to everything without hesitation. When Sophia's family offered to settle, he refused. He insisted on going to prison and serving his sentence. I couldn't understand. I tried again and again, bringing lawyers with me to visit him. But he refused every time. In the end, the court sentenced him to 3 years for intentional assault. The day before I sat for my college entrance exams, he finally agreed to see me. It had only been a while, but his hair had turned completely white. He looked as if he had aged a decade. His beard was white too. I barely recognized him. I stared at him for a long time. He never lifted his head. Eventually, he gave a small, awkward smile. Then, using sign language, he said, "I'm sorry." I felt a surge of anger. I didn't need an apology. I signed back quickly, agitated. "Why?" he replied. "They didn't report the incident because they wanted to force you to donate bone marrow. I couldn't let that happen." I signed faster, my hands shaking with frustration. "It's just bone marrow. I'd be fine afterward. But this cost you 3 years of your life." He looked at me calmly. His voice was steady, almost soft. "But I couldn't bear to let you donate to a bastard child like theirs. I couldn't be used as a weapon against you. I wouldn't let evil people win. I wouldn't let my daughter suffer, not even a little. Do you know that even the smallest cut on your hand breaks my heart? You donate bone marrow to them. Do you think I could live with that?" Tears blurred my vision. I could barely see his face anymore. I lowered my head, not wanting him to see me cry. He raised his hand and placed it gently against the glass between us. His expression was serious, almost fierce. "A bow. You are my treasure. Just like every little girl in this world, you have someone who loves you more than anything, and I will never let my baby be treated like that. Do you understand me?" I broke down and cried, nodding again and again. His tone softened, his smile returned. "So promise me, love yourself, remember. You're someone who deserves all the love in the world. If there's someone out there who loves you this much, who can't bear to see you hurt, then you shouldn't starve yourself, you shouldn't freeze. And you definitely shouldn't believe anyone who promises you forever without earning it." I nodded. Then he asked, "Do you still remember what I used to tell you?" I nodded again, then signed, "Happiness is something you have to give yourself." He smiled, leaned back in his chair, and gave a satisfied nod, as if he could finally rest easy. "Go now, do well on your exam. I'll be right here, waiting for you." In the visiting room, Detective was already waiting. Jong Cheong was brought in, handcuffed and shackled, walking with difficulty. It had only been a little over a decade, but he already looked like an old man. Detective frowned at the sight of him, unable to hide the pity in his eyes. He looked away. The two men sat face to face in silence. After a long pause, the detective finally broke it. "You did it again. Can't live a quiet life for once. One day sticking your neck out for someone, the next day taking the fall for someone else. Back then it was manslaughter, just trying to save a stranger, lost your job, couldn't get married, and now you're going to prison over a foster daughter." The detective lit a cigarette, took a drag, and looked hard at Jong Cheong, eyebrows tightly furrowed. "Really, Jong Cheong, did it have to end this way?" The detective's voice was low, almost pleading. "You had to hurt him. Couldn't you have called the police?" Jong Cheong gave a faint smile, the corners of his lips twitching with awkwardness. "The police can deal with criminals," he said, "but they can't deal with people who are just cruel, people who don't break the law, but still make your life a living hell, who humiliate you, bully you, push you, until you can't take it anymore." The detective fell silent. He slammed his hand on the table. "But that still doesn't justify what you did. You broke the law. You've ruined your own life." Jong Cheong let out a weary laugh. "That's just how people are, Officer Cheng. Look, if you see someone get kicked in the street, maybe you'd feel nothing. But if a group of people were kicking around a tiny, helpless puppy, just for fun, wouldn't you get angry?" The detective had no strength left to argue. The words he had once believed in, the moral codes he lived by, suddenly felt hollow. Because humans weren't machines, they couldn't always weigh right against wrong like numbers in an equation. They had feelings, they could endure, and they could break. So instead of lecturing further, He reached into his folder and pulled out Jong-cheong's x-ray from the hospital. Late stage, he said quietly. The doctor says treatment or no treatment. It won't change much. Jong-cheong nodded. I know. The detective froze. A terrible possibility suddenly struck him. His eyes widened. You're not saying, Jong-cheong smiled. Yeah, you figured it out, he went on. That day, I wasn't just angry. If I'd only been angry, I could have hit him lighter. But while I was hitting him, it hit me. I won't be able to stay by Abao's side much longer. Then I looked at that woman. And I remembered when Abao first came to us. I told her, your mother isn't coming back. Later, that sweet neighbor boy who cared for her. He died, and I told her, Ethan isn't coming back. Jong-cheong looked up. Tears brimming in his eyes. Officer Cheng, I don't want her to hear someone say again, your father's not coming back. I can't bear it. He wiped his tears with the back of his hand. This time will be the last time I see her. From now on, I won't appear in her life again. But Officer Cheng, can I ask you something? Every month, could you send her a letter from me? I've written 15 years worth. I have special ones for her birthdays, one for her wedding, even a threatening letter. He chuckled softly. If someone ever bullies her, give them that one. Tell them I'm a convicted murderer. Let them think twice. Then he looked up at the detective, eyes filled with hope and sincerity. Will you do that for me? After the college entrance exams, Lena came to see her father. She met the detective instead. When he saw her, he smiled. You must be Lena, right? Your father always talks about you, says you're smart and full of promise. Lena smiled shyly and typed on her phone's notepad. Where's my dad? The detective took a long drag from his cigarette. I was just about to tell you, your dad's been transferred to a prison in Xinjiang. See, there's this new policy. For inmates with useful skills, your dad's a chef, so they let him cook over there. He earns money, and it shortens his sentence. It's like a job, really. Lena looked skeptical, but staring into the detective's eyes, she thought, a policeman wouldn't lie to me like this. The detective didn't dare meet her gaze. He looked away and said, there's no phone access there, but he said he'll write to you every month. At the mention of letters, Lena's eyes lit up. She grinned and nodded, typing out a cheerful thank you. Then she asked, if he's working, how much time will be reduced? Will he come out soon? The detective's eyes turned red. He pretended it was from the smoke and nodded. Yeah. Lena looked relieved. To her, it felt like good news. She decided she would spend her summer working part-time. And every summer and winter break after that, she'd save up. When her father got out, she'd have a gift ready for him. She imagined the look on his face when he saw it, and thought, he'll be so proud. So proud. Next, I will tell you the second story. If you think the content of this issue is good, you can click to subscribe. Your support is our greatest motivation. I stand at the edge of an abyss, and no one can save me. Stella. The hospital registration lines stretched into several long queues. Even on a weekday, the halls were crowded and noisy. In a quiet corner, a slim figure blended into the throng without drawing attention. The tailored office suit traced the graceful lines of her body, professional yet elegant. She sat on a bench along the hospital corridor, leaning slightly forward, hands resting on her knees, fingers absently pinching the fabric of her skirt. Head bowed, she was silent. So still she seemed misplaced in the chaotic hospital air. Patient number 23, Stella. Please proceed to consultation room 5. The mechanical announcement broke her trance. Stella lifted her head, took her handbag, rose, and stepped into room 5. She handed over the test results and sat down. The doctor glanced at them, then said, 7 weeks along, and the development looks good. Congratulations. Stella said nothing. The doctor tried again. Are you married? Any previous miscarriages? Any gynecological issues? She did not answer. 3 questions, and not a word. The doctor looked up at her, a young woman, smartly dressed. Then he checked the name and age on the report. Stella, 22, an adult. From her appearance, a white-collar worker. She didn't look irresponsible. Perhaps just overwhelmed by a first pregnancy. So the doctor softened his tone. I need to understand your medical history so I can. No, the single, soft word cut him off. Her voice was lovely, but it trembled. Stella raised her eyes, meeting the doctor's gaze, and spoke carefully. Deliberately, "I don't want this baby." The beautiful voice carried a quiver, but the words were unwavering. The doctor paused, then composed himself. "Even so, I need your medical information." He repeated the questions. "Any previous pregnancies or miscarriages, gynecological problems, why the termination, are you married?" He added, "You'll need to sign consent for an abortion, you can't just stay silent. There are other patients waiting." "I'm not married. No gynecological problems." Her lashes trembled, memory dragged her back several years, her lips felt heavy, as if bound by iron. "I was pregnant once before," she said quietly. "I lost it." The doctor nodded in understanding. "Can you tell me why you miscarried?" "Yes," Stella replied. He asked more questions, and she answered each one calmly, without expression. In his years of practice, he had seen every kind of mother-to-be. Some overjoyed to tears, some devastated yet decisive, but this silent composure, this was new. From the moment she walked in, she had been unshaken. The air around her seemed pressed down by invisible weight. Finally, the doctor said, "If you're unmarried, we'll need your guardian or boyfriend's signature. Should I call your parents or—" "My parents died in a car accident when I was 17. Stella's voice was flat, "and my boyfriend and I broke up." Then she looked up again. "Can't I sign for myself?" The doctor hesitated, then answered, "You can." He opened a drawer, pulled out a form, and slid it toward her. "This is a waiver stating you're voluntarily ending the pregnancy. Sign, and I can schedule the procedure." Stella picked up the pen without glancing at the text, her eyes falling straight to the signature line. She had written only 3 strokes when her hand began to shake uncontrollably, her lips trembled. But she tightened her grip, finished her name, and pushed the paper back. "Thank you." Her voice stayed quiet, distant. The doctor said nothing more, just prepared the surgical order. Because she hadn't eaten since yesterday, she was eligible for anesthesia that afternoon. Less than an hour later, the procedure was done. When they wheeled her out, the anesthetic had not fully worn off. Stella drifted in a half-sleep as a nurse pushed her to a ward. She didn't know how long it was before she opened her eyes. She lay still, staring at the ceiling, a dull ache in her belly. Buzz, her phone vibrated in her bag. Slowly, she pulled the zipper, took it out, and answered after a glance at the screen. "Linda, what is it?" "Stella, where are you?" The voice on the line was urgent. Lowering her eyes, Stella said softly, "I had something to take care of today. I'm not at the office." A pause. Then, "But tonight there's an important dinner with the investor. He specifically asked for you." Stella was silent for a few seconds. "I understand." She ended the call, returned the phone to her bag, and swung her legs off the bed. A flicker of pain shot through her abdomen. She frowned, steadied herself, slipped on her heels, and pressed a hand to her stomach as she walked out. By the time she reached the company, Lucas was coming downstairs. He was dressed impeccably. A black plaid suit with a matching tie, a diamond tie clip adding a touch of elegance. His polished shoes gleamed, and his tall, poised figure radiated a restrained authority. His features were sharply defined, handsome yet distant. His expression cool and aloof. Hearing the door, Lucas glanced up briefly. Stella stepped out of the cab, straightened her clothes, and walked toward him in her heels. She stopped about a meter away. "Lucas." Her head dipped slightly in respect. Lucas gave her a detached look, said nothing, and slid into the car. Stella closed the door behind him, moved to the passenger side, and got in. The business dinner was held at an upscale 5-star hotel. Lucas valued this project greatly. Handling it personally from the start, the other side seemed to sense his investment in it. They weren't budging, pushing for maximum advantage. They met in a reserved private room. As they entered, handshakes were exchanged. "Lucas, what a pleasure. I've heard about your talents for a long time. Meeting you today, well." The rumors were true. Haha. Across from the youthful Lucas and Stella sat a table of sharp-eyed, calculating men in their 30s and 40s. Seasoned players who could smell weakness from across a room. After shaking hands with Lucas, the man turned his gaze to Stella. "And this is—" Stella offered a polite smile. "Mr. Lee, Mr. Fang, nice to meet you. I'm Stella, Lucas's assistant." Recognition dawned on Mr. Lee's face. Ah, so you're that legendary assistant. Loyal, sharp, and beautiful. Everyone in the industry knew about Lucas's right-hand woman, though young. Stella was known for her competence. She had played a key role in securing numerous major deals. It was often said that without Stella, Lucas's company wouldn't have reached its current level of success. You flatter me, Mr. Lee. Stella dipped her head modestly. But Mr. Lee's interest clearly didn't stop at her resume. He leaned in slightly. Nyan, is it? Which Nyan character is it? There were many homophones in Chinese for Nyan. The question caught Stella off guard, for a moment. Her expression flickered, then she answered softly, it's the Nyan from Morning. Lucas's eyes shifted to her, his brows furrowing, and then, as if echoing from some distant memory, he heard the shy, gentle voice of a girl whispering, I'm Stella, the Nyan from Never Forgetting. Now, she called it Morning. He knew why. A flash of pain crossed his dark eyes, then quickly turned to resentment. He looked away, saying nothing. The group sat down. Lucas got straight to business. But the other side clearly came with their own agenda. Mr. Fang waved a hand, chuckling self-righteously. Ah, it's lunchtime. Let's eat. No work talk for now. It was a transparent excuse. If they really hadn't come to talk business, they wouldn't have brought their assistants. Stella sat beside Lucas, eyeing the cup of hot water in front of her. The waiter had brought a pot earlier. She'd only recently undergone an abortion. Her body was still weak. She couldn't afford cold drinks or food. Rising from her seat, she picked up the cup and smiled with practiced grace. I'm sure you've both looked into Kayla Group's capabilities. Please trust that we will not disappoint you. On a table full of men, a woman who speaks well always earns a little more attention. Sure enough, the excuse of no business talk was quietly dropped. Mr. Fang, who was round-bellied and leering, chuckled as his gaze lingered on Stella's figure. Of course we know Kayla's got skills. We've even heard assistant Shin here is famous for her drinking prowess. What a coincidence. Lee and I hold our liquor too. Care for a round. Her abdomen still ached faintly from the surgery. One hand pressed gently against it beneath the table. Her lipstick made her complexion look better than it was. She'd lost too much blood recently. Mr. Fang didn't give her the chance to refuse. He signaled the waiter. A moment later, an ice bucket arrived, packed with bottles of chilled liquor and clinking ice cubes. Drinks are only good when they're cold, Mr. Lee said with a grin, pulling a bottle from the bucket and pouring it straight into a large-bellied wine glass. Filling it to the brim, he poured for Mr. Fang and himself, then turned to Stella, lifting his glass. Come on, Assistant Shin, for me and Mr. Fang. Just one drink. Stella stared down at the glass. Her fingers brushed the rim, cold enough to make her hand tremble. Lucas said nothing. His face was like stone. 3 seconds of silence passed. Just as the two men prepared to press her again, Stella looked up, still smiling. She raised her glass. Forgive me for the show. And then, in one graceful tilt, she downed the entire drink. Her frame was slender, her collarbones stark beneath her fitted blouse. The chilled liquor slid down her throat without pause, not a drop left. She tipped the glass upside down, letting the final droplets fall to the floor. People said Stella had been with Lucas since the founding of Kayla Group. In the early days, without investors, they had to rely on charm and grit to attract clients. Stella had accompanied Lucas to every networking dinner, clinking glasses with seasoned businessmen, drinking for the chance to be taken seriously. Now they saw for themselves. She wasn't just a rumor. Behind her soft features was steel. Lee and Fang were stunned, then burst into laughter. Now that's the kind of woman we like working with. They downed their own drinks in response. Stella's skin was fair, so pale she didn't even need foundation. The icy alcohol had drained what little color was left in her face. Her lipstick had smudged against the glass, fading from her lips, exposing the tired lines of exhaustion. But she didn't let it show. Smiling as always, she picked up the bottle and refilled their glasses. Then poured another for herself. It's an honor to have your recognition. I'll drink mine. Please enjoy yours as you like. She downed the second drink, 2 glasses of liquor deep. The table finally turned serious. Stella set her glass down and moved into business. Since you were willing to meet with us, It means you already recognize Kayla Group's value, and we greatly appreciate the opportunity to collaborate. If both sides are interested, then why delay? The sooner we work together, the sooner we both benefit. Don't you agree, Mr. Fang? And Mr. Lee stopped playing coy. Well, we've looked into your company, and also another firm, Mr. Lee said, tone measured. Both are quite capable, but the other side offered to increase profit sharing by 10%, so his expression showed hesitation, clearly using it as leverage. In business, even 1% meant millions. Lucas barely lifted his gaze, his face was stoic as always, cold and unreadable. Like a night sky without a single star. Stella understood, they had known each other long enough, one glance, and she knew what he meant. The pain from the 2 glasses of cold liquor hit her all at once, her abdomen throbbed sharply, like blades twisting inside her, she nearly collapsed. Only her grip on the chair had kept her from falling. Letting out a long breath, she stood up again. She first picked up the wine bottle, then Lucas's glass, poured him a full one, and handed it to him. Lucas rose as he took the glass from Stella. He lifted his hand slightly, expression calm and unreadable as he looked toward the 2 executives. His voice wasn't loud, but each word rang with clarity and conviction. The other company promised to cut their profits by 10% for you. Then allow me, on behalf of Kayla Group, to promise. What will bring your companies is not 10% off, but double the return. Stella also stood up. Lucas never makes empty promises. Now that he's made this one, you can count on it. Gentlemen, we sincerely hope you'll consider carefully. One had to admit, Lucas knew how to make a deal irresistible. One side offered a mere 10% discount, the other promised double the profit. Any smart person would know which to choose. But investment was never a sure thing. There was no guaranteed win, no guaranteed loss. It took skill and luck, not empty words. Sensing their hesitation, Stella didn't even pause. She reached into the ice bucket beside her, pulled out another bottle, and uncorked it right in front of them. Holding the bottle by the neck, she looked straight at the 2 seasoned businessmen and said with seriousness, Kayla Group will not let your companies down. This is our sincerity. Then, without another word, she raised the bottle to her lips and drank directly from it, as the liquid inside slowly diminished. Both executives sat stunned for a few seconds, caught off guard by Stella's boldness and ferocity, and then they slammed their glasses on the table and shouted, "Well said." Stella set down the bottle, more than half of it gone. With assistant Shin's sincerity, one of them declared, "We have no doubt your company will deliver. You have our word," which, unambiguously, meant, deal closed. A faint smile curved Stella's lips. "Thank you, President Fang, President Lee. We look forward to working together. Come on, let's toast to our cooperation." Stella lifted her wine glass again and clinked it with theirs. Glass after glass went down, the alcohol burned with every swallow, iced wine cooling the flames, but also intensifying the pain deep in her abdomen. The cycle repeated, burning, freezing, aching, until she gradually went numb. The taste of wine, the chill, the pain, they all faded into nothing. After several rounds, Presidents Lee and Fang had both passed out drunk. Their assistants helped them out, wobbling and full of laughter. Assistant Shin, "You're really something. Why don't you come work for me instead? I'll give you a VP position." Given Stella's skill and poise, she was more than qualified for a vice president's role. In fact, this wasn't the first time someone tried to poach her, but she handled these advances with ease, feeling a familiar, sharp gaze on her. Stella didn't look back. She only smiled lightly and replied, "President Lee, thank you for your appreciation. Just being able to work with you this once is already a great honor for me. I wouldn't dare hope for more." It was the kind of answer that managed to reject while still flattering, refined and graceful. Sure enough. President Lee chuckled heartily, patting his chest. "This deal's in the bag. If you're still unsure, I'll have the legal team draft the contract tonight." He immediately ordered his assistant to call back to the office, instructing them to work overtime and send the documents straight to Kayla Group. When the drinking session ended, Stella helped the assistants load the 2 drunken execs into their cars. Only after watching the taillights disappear into the distance did she finally exhale, her body swaying slightly from exhaustion. Their own car was already waiting. Lucas took the back seat, and Stella, staggering a bit, pulled open the passenger door and climbed in. Buckle, click, the driver pressed on the gas. The car pulled away from the hotel, leaning her head against the window. Stella let herself slip into the quiet, now that the numbness of alcohol was wearing off. The pain in her abdomen surged back with vengeance. She frowned, eyes closed, breathing shallow and strained, one hand pressed against her lower belly. She could feel the warmth spreading, growing more intense. After her recent procedure, she had made sure to wear extra protection. She hadn't expected any problems. But the pain, it was becoming unbearable. Still, Stella didn't make a sound. She sat there in silence, enduring it all alone, from the back seat. The man who had seemed to be resting had quietly opened his eyes. Lucas stared at the rearview mirror. He couldn't see her face, only her shoulder, but that one shoulder, that one posture. He watched all the way back. The car finally pulled up in front of a high-end apartment complex. The driver, careful not to wake the man in the back, glanced through the mirror and spoke softly, "Assistant Shin, we've arrived." Hearing his voice, Stella slowly opened her eyes and looked outside. The building was familiar. Her brows tightened slightly, her voice was low. "Thank you." She gathered her bag and got out. Bang! The sound of the door closing made the man in the back seat open his eyes again. Just as the driver was about to ask Lucas where to head next, bang! Another door closed. By the time the driver looked up again, he was alone in the car. At the complex entrance, the security guard stood at attention, 24/7 on duty, recognizing Stella and Lucas as residents. They skipped any ID checks and quickly scanned them in. One after the other, the two entered. They walked along the gravel path. Stella held her stomach, walking ahead. Lucas followed silently, keeping a 5-meter distance. It was late. The path was empty but for the sound of 2 sets of footsteps, measured, echoing in the still night. She entered one of the buildings. Lucas followed. They waited for the elevator. Just the two of them. Stella pressed the button. The doors opened. She stepped to the right. Lucas stood to the left. Neither spoke. She hit the close button, then tapped the floor. Lucas said nothing. The elevator rose slowly. From the moment they entered the complex, neither had said a word. They felt like strangers, separated not by distance, but by silence so thick it almost had weight. Ding! Their floor. The doors opened. Stella stepped out first. Lucas followed behind. She walked to a door, placed her finger on the smart lock. The door clicked open. She entered. Lucas followed, and shut the door behind them. The sound of the door closing shattered the tense and strange silence between them. Before Stella could turn on the lights, Lucas suddenly grabbed her wrist and yanked her back. By the time she realized what was happening, she was already pinned against the front door. Lucas's tall frame loomed over her with aggressive dominance. One hand gripped her waist tightly, the other cupped the back of her head. He leaned down and bit her lips hard, with vengeance, with hatred. The pain on her lips was sharp and unmistakable. Snapping out of her daze, Stella bit back without hesitation. Neither of them held back. They clashed with full force. All the anger and frustration bottled up from that dinner table erupted at this very moment. Lucas's fingers dug into her waist, even in the dark. His eyes burned with hatred. "I hate you," he growled, each word forced out between clenched teeth. He bit her lips again, harshly, and repeated, "Stella, I hate you." In the darkness, Stella let out a bitter laugh. She met his cold gaze head-on, unflinching. "How fitting. I hate you too." Lucas sank his teeth into her neck. Stella only furrowed her brows. Not uttering a single sound, though it was dark, they both knew this apartment inside out. Where the cups were, where the light switches were, even where the creaky floorboard was. Lucas dragged her into the bedroom. He kicked the door shut behind them. No light, only pitch-black silence. He shoved her onto the bed. His hot breath fell against her cheek again. The cold wine from earlier was catching up with her. Pain pierced through her lower abdomen like a drill. It felt like something inside her was being dragged downward. At first, Stella tried to resist, but the last of her strength quickly faded. She lay there, numb, silent, motionless. Their relationship was like the stars in the night sky outside, never destined to meet the sun. A sharp sound cut through the dark. Something had fallen to the ground. Neither of them paid attention. That was, until Lucas's fingers brushed across something wet. He froze. Maybe it was just a mistake. But the sensation was too real. He immediately reached out to the switch. Click. The room lit up. Stella lay there in disarray. Her hair was messy, her face pale. Nothing about her looked human anymore. Lucas's gaze shot down. There was blood, a lot of it, staining the sheets. The blinding light made Stella squint. Her eyes barely opened into slits. Without lipstick, her complexion was frighteningly pale. She looked at Lucas and forced a smile. She looked like someone at death's door. Lucas opened his mouth, but then something on the floor caught his eye. It was Stella's bag. It had fallen when they entered, and the zipper hadn't been closed. Its contents had spilled across the floor. A sheet of paper from a hospital caught his attention. He bent down and picked it up, then saw there was another document tucked inside, an ultrasound report. Name, Stella, age, 22, the examination date, today. Lucas's body stiffened, but before he could react, he saw the document that had been wrapped around it. It wasn't just paper, it was a voluntary abortion consent form. Her name was signed neatly at the bottom, Stella. Attached to it was a receipt from the hospital. Payment for the procedure. Lucas's pupils constricted, his whole body frozen. The consent form crumpled tightly in his hand. He spun around, eyes blazing with fury. His voice was low but seething with rage. You had an abortion. Stella's voice was faint, but clear. Yes. Who gave you permission to do that? His voice rose sharply. Stella remained silent. His temper snapped. He grabbed her collar and yanked her upright with ease. Answer me. Who gave you the right to do that? Forced to face him, Stella gave him a pale, cold smile. Don't worry, I remembered what you said. You didn't want any ties with me, so she had listened. He didn't want a connection. She'd made sure there wasn't one. Lucas was stunned. Like a bucket of cold water had been dumped over his head. The woman in his arms looked like a sick kitten. Her breathing was weak, like she could die at any moment. As if scalded, he let go of her instantly. She collapsed back onto the bed in a heap. Her hand instinctively covered her abdomen. The blood on her dress was spreading fast. Her breathing grew shallow. Eyes half closed, she murmured, "There's no need to say anything, Lucas. This is the punishment I deserve." She opened her eyes slowly, gazing blankly at the ceiling. Her voice was dull, almost lifeless. "People like me belong in hell." The words stabbed deep into Lucas's heart. He towered over her, teeth clenched, eyes burning. "That's right," he growled. "A cold-hearted thing like you does belong in hell." Stella gave a broken, mocking smile. The ultrasound and abortion forms were crushed in Lucas's hand. Fighting the overwhelming urge to strangle her then and there, he turned abruptly and stormed out of the room. Lucas, he had just opened the bedroom door when the girl's voice came from behind. His footsteps halted. Stella's voice was weak, almost airy. "If you're not planning to kill me tonight, then do me a favor and call an ambulance. Thanks, Lucas." There was another moment of silence, then she heard him step out of the room. Bang! The sound of the front door slamming shut echoed in her ears. Stella lay curled up on the bed, letting out a low, bitter laugh. She had drunk far too much. Her head pounded. She curled into herself, pressing her hand against her lower abdomen, groaning softly in pain. Only when she was completely alone did she dare to show her weakness. She couldn't help but think, maybe dying like this wouldn't be so bad. 15 minutes later, the ambulance arrived at the gates of the complex. The security guard, who had just seen Stella walk in not long ago, now watched in stunned silence as she was carried out on a stretcher. The medical team entered the apartment using the passcode. When they rushed into the bedroom, they found Stella curled up in a fetal position, her dress and the bedsheets soaked in blood. They immediately lifted her onto the stretcher. She was barely conscious by then. Her breath was shallow, and her lips twitched into a bitter smile. Of course Lucas wouldn't let her die that easily, not without suffering first. Stella was rushed to the ER in the middle of the night. She had undergone a surgical abortion recently, but in her grief she had ignored all the warnings: drinking, chilling her body, and now severe hemorrhaging. Fortunately, She was saved in time. The night shift doctor happened to be the same one Stella had seen earlier that day. She was shocked when she saw her being wheeled into the room. After learning what had happened, she entered the recovery ward. Stella was lying on the bed, frail and ghostly pale. Her hands were ice-cold. She looked nothing like a 22-year-old girl. After placing an 4 in her arm and adjusting the drip rate, the doctor hesitated, clearly wanting to say something. Eventually, she couldn't help herself and spoke in a restrained but scolding tone. "Your body is your own. If you don't take care of it, who else will, even if your parents are gone? You can't just give up on yourself like this." Can you imagine how heartbroken they'd be, looking down from heaven? She couldn't stand it anymore. Young people might have strong bodies, but even they couldn't take this kind of abuse. Stella listened quietly. Then, after a pause, she lifted her head and looked at the doctor. Thank you for caring." The doctor was briefly stunned. Seeing how fragile Stella looked, she couldn't bring herself to scold her anymore. She sighed, her voice softening. "Just rest now. Even after an abortion, you need time to recover. No cold drinks, no spicy food, no alcohol. If you don't take care of yourself now, you'll regret it when you're older." With that, she left the room. Stella stared silently at the ceiling. Something tugged at her thoughts. She reached for the phone lying next to her. She hadn't brought anything with her when the paramedics took her out. Not her wallet, not her bag, but this phone had stayed in her pocket. Like a protective charm, now covered in dried blood, the phone had been taken out by the nurse when changing her into a hospital gown. It was an old model, 3 or 4 years outdated. She pressed the side button and the screen lit up. After unlocking it, she tapped into the gallery. There was only one photo. A blue background ID photo of a young girl. The girl looked innocent and youthful, with bright eyes like stars. Her softly curled bangs gave her a playful charm, a heart-shaped face, large eyes, and a smile so warm it could heal wounds. Stella stared at that smile for a long time. She didn't know how long she had been dazed before she finally exited the gallery. There was barely anything else on the phone, not even apps, just the few default ones you couldn't delete. She opened her messages. The inbox was just as empty. Only one message, from a contact named Kayla, sent 4 years ago. That message, which she had read countless times, was so deeply etched in her bones that she could recite it word for word. Reading it now, she was instantly pulled back to that day. 4 years ago, it had been Kayla's birthday. The two of them had gone to Lucas's university to surprise him with a birthday dinner. Lucas had been Kayla's Ethan back then, and he had been her boyfriend too. Traffic around a university was always a nightmare. Over time, she and Kayla had discovered a shortcut through a small, nearly abandoned alley that saved them time. That day, as usual, they took the alley. They didn't expect to be stopped by 2 burly, drunken men who had clearly been drinking too much, and who had worse intentions. Kayla stepped forward to block them and told her to run, so she ran. By the time she came back with help, the men were gone. Kayla was on the ground, disheveled and lifeless. Her eyes were empty. Her spirit was gone. She was never the same after that. She stopped smiling, stopped talking. She locked herself in her room every day. A month later, Kayla jumped from a building. Before she jumped, she sent one last text. "Nyan Nyan, I've thought about everything. I don't regret letting you run. In that moment, if you hadn't, neither of us would have made it, but I just can't live with who I am now. I want to be free, you and my brother. Live well, be happy." Stella's lashes trembled violently, her brows furrowed tight. Since Kayla's death, she had dreamed the same dream again and again. Like a film on rewind, she returned to that alley. In the dream, Kayla still stood in front of the drunk men, arms outstretched, turning to shout, "Nyan Nyan, run, Xiao Rui." Stella murmured in her sleep, I'm sorry." She felt someone touch her hand. Suddenly, her eyes flew open. Xiao Rui, the nurse, who had just finished tucking her hand back under the blanket, jumped in surprise. Seeing Stella wide-eyed and breathing hard, the nurse quickly explained, "The 4-bag finished. I came to change it. Your arm kept moving. I was afraid the needle would come loose." Jolted from the nightmare, Stella's breath came fast and uneven, but hearing the nurse's words grounded her back to the present. Right, she was in the hospital. The four-stand was beside her. The nurse held an empty drip bag. "Sorry, I had a nightmare," Stella said, slowly calming herself. "No worries, you should try to sleep a little. I'll come back when this next one finishes." The nurse left with the empty bag. Stella placed her free hand against her forehead, trying to steady herself. She'd drunk too much at dinner. It had all blurred together. Now, checking her phone again, she realized she'd only been asleep for 20 minutes. The screen was still on that old text from Kayla, and suddenly, without thinking, Stella hit the call button. "The number you have dialed is no longer in service." She hung up and dialed again. "The number you have dialed is no longer in service." The number you have, staring at the familiar string of digits, her eyes reddened, a tear fell onto the screen. She kept calling, over and over. Her face pale and hollow, she no longer felt sleepy. When the last four finished, the nurse returned and removed the needle. "The doctor wants you to stay overnight for observation. Tomorrow. You'll get a full exam. It's past midnight now. Try to rest." Stella looked at the nurse, then suddenly asked, "Is the night shift doctor still around?" "The night shift doctor? You mean Dr. Kong?" Stella nodded. "Yes, she's still in the office. Are you feeling unwell? I can go get her." "No," Stella interrupted softly. "I just need to talk to her." Seeing that the bleeding had stopped, Stella peeled off the tape and tossed it in the trash. Then she stood and quietly left the room. Dr. Kong was still working. When she heard a knock at the door, she looked up. There was Stella, still in her hospital gown, still pale as a ghost, standing in the doorway. "Stella, what is it?" Stella walked in, one hand pressed lightly against her abdomen, her steps just a little unsteady. "Dr. Kong, could you prescribe me some sleeping pills?" The request made Dr. Kong's expression sharpen immediately. Stella's brows drew together. "It's nothing else, I just haven't slept in 2 days. Earlier I only dozed for 20 minutes, then woke up with a start and couldn't get back to sleep." Since the moment she'd seen the 2 red lines on the pregnancy test, Stella had been numb, sitting on the bathroom floor all night, torn between dread and hesitation. She didn't want to admit it. But the truth was inescapable. This child wasn't the fruit of love, but the consequence of a curse, an existence that should never have been. Kayla's suicide. Lucas's hatred. Between them stretched a gulf named Kayla, a gulf neither of them could cross. Seeing her pale face and the dark circles under her eyes, Dr. Kong sighed helplessly. "All right, I understand. Go back for now. I'll have someone bring them to you shortly." Stella nodded. "Thank you." Back in her ward, the nurse who had removed her 4 earlier returned with a glass of water and the pills. "These are from Dr. Kong." "Thank you," Stella replied, swallowing the pills. She lay down calmly and closed her eyes. Outside, the nurse returned to the station and immediately whispered to her colleague, "I think the patient in bed 23 is strange." The hint of gossip perked her colleague's interest. "You mean the young woman they brought in?" "Yes, what happened? Tell me." The nurse lowered her voice. "When I changed her 4 earlier, she seemed to be having a nightmare, kept saying I'm sorry, then she jolted awake and scared me half to death. Later I saw her staring at her phone, crying, and making calls. Yeah, even I could hear the automated voice on the other end saying the number didn't exist, but she just kept dialing again and again, like she couldn't hear it, in the quiet, sterile hospital at this hour." The story sent a chill through the colleague. She rubbed her arms. "That's creepy. And just now she asked Dr. Kong for sleeping pills. She's beautiful, but in that state." The nurse tapped a finger to her temple, whispering, "She might be having a breakdown." The colleague shivered. "It really seems possible. Who keeps calling a dead number?" While they whispered about Stella's sanity, a young nurse rushed in, her face pale with panic. "Bed 23. Something's happened." The 2 nurses froze, their faces draining of color. After taking the sleeping pills, Stella slept deeply for the first time in what felt like forever. No dreams. No tears, no sudden jolts awake. When she finally opened her eyes, she stared at the white hospital ceiling for a long while. No wonder people say sleep heals. The world itself seemed softer. Her abdomen still ached faintly, but she could ignore it. She tried to stretch, only then realizing that someone was holding her hand. Turning her head, she saw a man asleep beside her bed, his hand clasping hers. Even without seeing his face, She recognized him by his hair. Shock flickered in her eyes. She hadn't expected him here. Before she could withdraw her hand or speak, her slight movement stirred him awake. Xiao Mubai had been keeping watch all night. Even in half-sleep he'd stayed alert, so Stella's small shift roused him instantly. His eyes opened to find her looking back at him. Seeing her awake, Stella whispered in surprise, "Why are you here?" "You're awake." His drowsiness vanished. "Are you feeling any discomfort? I'll get the doctor right now." Before she could answer, he pressed the call button. The doctors who had been waiting outside hurried in to examine her. Among them were Dr. Kong and a middle-aged man in his 40s. One hung his head in silence, while the other's face was tight with worry. Stella couldn't quite understand. When the examination was over, the anxious man quickly asked, "How is she?" "Is she all right?" the doctor replied. "Director Lee, she's fine. Her body's weak from the abortion, but she's stable." "Good, good." Director Lee exhaled in relief. As the doctors began to leave, Lee and Dr. Kong remained. The middle-aged man stepped forward and bowed deeply. "Miss Shin, I'm Lee, the director of First Hospital. I sincerely apologize. This was our doctor's negligence that caused the incident." Stella blinked, confused, and turned to Xiao Mubai. He explained quietly, "Yesterday you were on the brink of death." She knew she'd been rushed in for severe bleeding, but not that her life had hung by a thread, or how the hospital was involved. Seeing her bewilderment, the usually gentle Xiao Mubai spoke with rare anger. "Drinking that much and then taking sleeping pills. Did you really want to die?" At those words, Stella finally understood. No wonder Dr. Kong looked so uneasy. The pills she'd taken were his prescription. Director Lee bowed again. "This was our failure. We'll dismiss the doctor responsible. All your hospital expenses will be waived, and we'll cover your nutritional care as well, if you're willing to settle privately. Whatever compensation you request, we'll do our best to meet it. We can't let this become public. It would damage the hospital's reputation terribly." Fortunately, it didn't happen during the day. The hospital was quiet at night, with most patients resting. The only ones who knew about the incident were the emergency doctors and a few nurses, and Director Lee had already given strict orders for them to keep their mouths shut. Now, the hospital wanted to offer Stella an apology and cover all her treatment expenses, on the condition that she wouldn't pursue legal responsibility. Stella froze. She had no memory of what had happened after taking the medication the night before. Everything after that was a blur. Seeing her silence, Director Lee assumed she was preparing to escalate the matter. Anxious, he turned and shot a glare at Dr. Kong, barking, "What are you standing there for? Apologize now. Do you even realize you nearly killed someone?" Dr. Kong stepped forward quickly, head lowered, his voice full of guilt. "Miss Shin, I'm so sorry. I prescribed medication without confirming your full condition. It was entirely my fault. Please don't make this a bigger issue." Director Lee nodded furiously beside him. Yes, if Miss Shin is willing to settle this privately, we'll agree to anything you ask." He had mentally prepared to pay dearly for this mistake. So when Stella finally spoke, it caught him completely off guard. "It's fine," she said. "I won't be pursuing any action." Director Lee was stunned. In all his years, he'd never seen a patient let a hospital off the hook this easily. "Miss Shin." Stella tried to sit up. Xiao Mubai, who had been by her side the whole time, noticed immediately and adjusted the bed for her. He raised the headboard, placed a pillow behind her lower back for support, and helped her get comfortable. Compared to the deathly pale face she had yesterday when she was rushed in, she looked much better after some rest, though still visibly drained. Looking at both Director Lee and Dr. Kong, Stella said calmly, "I didn't explain my condition properly when I asked Dr. Kong for sleeping pills." Dr. Kong hadn't been the emergency physician on duty. He only knew Stella had been admitted due to excessive bleeding after a miscarriage. He hadn't known she had been drinking beforehand. By the time she changed into a hospital gown, the smell of alcohol had mostly faded. "This was my own mistake. I won't hold the hospital accountable, and I ask that Dr. Kong not be fired either." "Yes, of course." Director Lee immediately agreed, afraid she might change her mind. "Well then, I won't take up more of your time. If you need anything, Just press the call button. Our doctors and nurses are at your service, anytime. Thank you, Stella replied, relieved. Director Lee turned to leave. Dr. Kong's expression also relaxed with a mix of relief and gratitude. Just as Dr. Kong reached the door, Stella hesitated, then called out, Dr. Kong. He stopped in his tracks and turned back, surprised. Miss Shin. Stella smiled faintly. Thank you for your concern. Dr. Kong blinked, stunned for a moment, then responded automatically. You're welcome. As he left, Xiao Mubai frowned in confusion. He almost got you killed. Why thank him? Stella looked away. It was my fault, but Xiao Mubai's expression remained tight with concern. Don't worry, Stella said with a weak chuckle. I'm still alive, aren't I? Watching her pretend like everything was fine. Xiao Mubai couldn't help but scold her, his voice tense. On the same day you miscarried, you drank, you exposed yourself to cold. Then overdosed on sleeping pills and had to be rushed to the hospital. Were you trying to die faster? Stella gave him a small smile. Well, since I'm not dead yet, maybe go easy on me. Her face was still pale and haggard, and the reprimand died in his throat, since he couldn't leave her alone. Xiao Mubai asked a nurse to help buy some food. Out of guilt, Director Lee had instructed the staff to take extra care of Stella. Soon, the nurse returned with food. Stella's body was weak and couldn't handle greasy food, so they brought her a bowl of pork and preserved egg congee. The nurse set the lid aside. Xiao Mubai placed some napkins under the container to prevent the heat from transferring, then carefully scooped a spoonful, blew on it, and only when it was warm, not hot. Did he feed it to her? Stella took a bite, still thinking about what she wanted to ask earlier. She spoke up again. How did you know I was here? He scooped another spoonful. After you took the pills, you lost consciousness. Luckily, a nurse noticed something was wrong and called for help right away. Good thing you didn't throw up in your sleep. Otherwise, you could have suffocated. He hadn't witnessed the scene himself, but even just hearing about it had chilled him. One of the nurses who helped bring you in saw your phone on the floor. Since you were alone and unconscious, she brought it along just in case it was needed. Stella's phone was an older model with a fingerprint lock. The staff couldn't access it at first. After checking the call history, the hospital tried calling the number that dialed 911, but no one picked up. The nurse eventually used your fingerprint to unlock it and found my number in your contacts. That's how they got a hold of me. Stella nodded. So that's what happened. Xiao Mubai looked at her, his warm eyes filled with worry. Nyan Nyan, you know it's over with him. Why keep hurting yourself like this? Stella froze. I owe him. No, you don't owe Lucas anything, Xiao Mubai said firmly. Even if you once did, after all these years, you've paid it back in full. Kayla's been gone 4 years. Are you really going to live like this forever? He looked at her seriously. Nyan Nyan. You need to let go. Her gaze dropped to her hands. A flicker of pain crossed her face, her lips trembling. How can I let go? She should have had a beautiful life. But because of me, hers ended at 18. Because of me, Nyan Nyan, I'm standing in a void, and no one can pull me out, no one. Suddenly, she turned to him. If I had died yesterday, do you think I would have gone to heaven? Without waiting for an answer, she shook her head. Probably not. People like me. People who've done unforgivable things. We go to hell. Her voice was hollow now, distant, and if I go to hell, I won't see her again. Then, as if she caught herself, Stella forced a smile and looked at him. Don't worry, people like me don't die so easily. Bad things last forever, right? If Lucas hated her, fine, she'd give him his revenge. If he wanted no connection to her, fine, she'd erase everything that shouldn't exist. This was what she owed Kayla, owed Lucas, owed the Liu family, and now, repaying even a little more, maybe it would ease her guilt just enough. Maybe one day, she'd be lucky enough to go to heaven and see Kayla again, and say, in person, I'm sorry. The hospital arranged a full series of advanced tests for Stella, even opening the VIP channel to speed things up. Within less than an hour, all tests were complete. The results, nothing serious, only that she was severely weakened, having just gone through a miscarriage. Miscarriages cause significant trauma to the body and require a proper recovery period. During this time, she had to avoid cold, spicy, or greasy food, and alcohol was strictly forbidden. She needed rest, no strenuous activity. If she didn't take care of herself now, the consequences wouldn't just be discomfort later. Infertility could be on the line. But Stella wasn't worried about the future, whether she stayed healthy or deteriorated, lived or died. It all felt the same to her. Xiao Mubai, however, was worried. He wanted her to stay at the hospital for observation a little longer. But Stella insisted on going home, and with Stella, Xiao Mubai had always honored her choices. The only thing he insisted on was getting the doctor to prescribe proper medicine to help her body recover. It was that time of year when winter had just begun to melt into spring. The air was warming up, but the wind still carried a biting chill. Xiao Mubai ran back and forth to pick up her medication and completed the discharge paperwork himself as the two of them walked out of the hospital. A cold gust greeted them. Stella couldn't help but shiver. She had been rushed to the hospital the night before, her clothes soaked in blood. The outfit she had on now was something a nurse had quickly gone out and bought for her, but it was only one set, no coat. Xiao Mubai felt the chill too, without hesitation. He slipped off his windbreaker and moved to drape it over her shoulders. She had just suffered a miscarriage. She couldn't afford to catch a cold, seeing the coat in his hands. Stella instinctively moved to refuse. "I don't need, put it on," he said. He was rarely this forceful, but now, his tone left no room for argument. "Or do you want me to dress you myself?" The words caught in her throat. After a few seconds of silence, she finally reached out and took the coat, putting it on quietly. Warmth instantly wrapped around her. The faint scent of Xiao Mubai lingered near her nose. She pulled the coat tighter around herself and murmured, "Thank you." Only when she obeyed did the tension on Xiao Mubai's face ease. He guided her to the parking lot and drove her home. The ride was quiet, the air inside the car heavy with unspoken thoughts. Neither of them said a word. When the car stopped at the entrance of Stella's high-end apartment complex, she turned to look at the familiar gate, then looked at Xiao Mubai in the driver's seat. Seeing him unbuckling his seatbelt, she quickly spoke, "You can drop me off here, I'll go in by myself." But Xiao Mubai replied, "I'll walk you in." She frowned slightly, not wanting to trouble him further, and casually made up a reason. "The security here doesn't allow long parking, and we're already at the gate. I'll be fine." High-end residences often have strict security rules. His car had only been stopped for a minute when a security guard began walking over, prepared to ask him to move along. Glancing around, Xiao Mubai turned the car around and parked at a designated area a bit further away. He unbuckled his seatbelt, grabbed Stella's bag of medicine, and opened the door. "Let's go." With nothing else to say, Stella followed him out of the car. The same guard from last night was on duty. Seeing them enter the lobby, he immediately recognized Stella and approached with concern. "Miss Shin, are you all right?" She still looked pale and weak, though better than yesterday. Stella smiled faintly, her voice soft and pleasant. "I'm okay, just not feeling well, that's all." The security guard, a kind, honest-looking middle-aged man, nodded with relief. "Young people have to take better care of themselves out there." "I will, thank you," she replied gently. Stella had lived in the complex for years. The guards knew her well, but they didn't recognize Xiao Mubai, sensing the curious gaze. He smiled and introduced himself. "I'm her brother, just brought her back from the hospital. I needed to make sure she got home safe. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to rest." The guard nodded in understanding and swiped them through the gate. "Thanks, sir," Xiao Mubai said politely. They continued walking through the quiet courtyard until they reached the building entrance. Just before going in, Stella stopped. She shrugged off his coat and handed it back to him. Without saying a word, he accepted it. Then he passed her the bag of medicine. "I had the doctor label everything clearly. How many times per day, how many pills each time. It's all written on the boxes. Don't forget to take them. These next few days, just stay home and rest. If you need anything, call me. You know my phone is always on. For you, alright, don't stay out here too long. It's cold, go on upstairs." Stella took the bag and looked down at it, seeing that she wasn't moving. Xiao Mubai was about to ask what was wrong when she suddenly looked up at him, her expression serious. "Xiao Mubai," she said, let's not keep in touch anymore. Her tone was calm, but solemn. Xiao Mubai froze. Why? He asked. Did I do something wrong? She shook her head. You've been wonderful, and I'm grateful for all your help over the years, but we don't belong in the same world. Looking into his eyes, she continued, word by word, you're a good man. You deserve someone kind and gentle, not someone like me, who's already tainted. Because Xiao Mubai was good, he deserved happiness. He finally found his voice. But how do you know the kind and gentle girl in my heart isn't you? Stella's lips parted slightly. He gazed at her, eyes steady. All these years, you've carried the belief that you killed Kayla, that staying with Lucas was your penance, but in my heart, I've always believed you were a good person. Protecting you is something I do willingly. Stella was stunned, her eyes reddened. She quickly lowered her gaze to hide her tears. Xiao Mubai wanted to reach out and wipe them away, but in the end, he chose to respect her boundary and stayed where he was. Placing a hand gently on her shoulder, Xiao Mubai said solemnly, what happened back then wasn't your fault. You were a victim. Just like Kayla, the ones to blame were those two drunkards. So please, stop punishing yourself. You've never forgiven yourself. But if Kayla knew, it would break her heart. Stella's shoulder trembled slightly. The tears came like a flood, unstoppable. She sobbed softly, her voice caught in her throat. Xiao Mubai pulled her into his arms. Stella, don't see me as another burden. Everything I do for you, it's because I want to. All I want you to know is this. I'm not going anywhere. I'll stay by your side, not far away. Lucas stood on the gravel path, watching them in silence. He was still wearing the same suit from the day before, though it was much more disheveled now. The tie had been loosened, the blazer creased, with faint stains like shadows on the fabric. His cold expression gave nothing away. Those dark eyes, deep as a void, were impossible to read. Like a black hole capable of swallowing everything in its path. No one knew how long he stood there. Eventually, Lucas shifted slightly, but instead of approaching them, he turned and walked away with heavy, deliberate strides. Well, that's all for today's story. If you like this video, please subscribe. We will continue to update more exciting stories and look forward to seeing you next time.